We're catching a plane in Hawaii.
We'll meet you inside.
I'm going to reach up, I'm going to grab a pear and put it in my bag. One after the next.
I'm picking pears, I'm having fun picking pears.
When I was picking apricots and peaches down in Salinas and Hollister when I was
Lift, twist, lift and twist, lift and twist. Simple as that.
Go flip. Oh, my goodness.
Hey, Jorge.
Hello, Seth.
So,
Great time here.
where are we? What are we doing here?
We're going to pick pears.
Big ones. You stick it back in the 10 minutes and they'll corner.
What has crack on it?
Wow, look
Look
at
at all
that.
these pears for ACC.
Okay, we'll tell you what. We'll get people stand over here. Later on, we'll load.
Three.
Here. What they will build are these two-story buildings here, and the top floor will be.
Yeah, fantastic.
I got the wrong finger.
I know Chinese medicine exploring log.
Okay, what you got there, Gail? Well, hello. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ACC's Morning Coffee. My name is Ted Fong. I'm the Development Officer here at ACC, and I'm also the project manager for ACC on this cookbook. That said, there are so many people who actually did the work on the cookbook, including our illustrious editors, Maryellen Burns and David Suhu. So I just wanted to welcome all of you to this great launch of our cookbook, which will be out on September 16th. But this program will give you a preview of what's inside the book and also what went into creating the book and the many stories that we're going to treat you with during the launch of the cookbook. So without further ado, I want to turn this over to our host and editor of the ACC Community Cookbook, Maryellen Burns.
Thank you so much, especially those of you that came out today. Those of you at home, we brought dim sum you're going to miss out. I also want to thank Kimberly Graham, who is one of our editors and proofreaders for the book, Lana Chong, who came in closer to the end and helped tremendously by adding her stories and her sister's stories that she's going to share today. And we also have Karen Thalhammer, who's in the audience. And when the time comes for you to ask questions, she's going to figure out a mechanism for you to have a microphone. A lot of people ended up working on this, including Ellen Robinson, I'm going to forget names, Gloria Storer, Stacy Law. If I can do a shout out for Stacy. Stacy probably read through every recipe hundreds and hundreds of times. Ted's wife, Maryellen, Fong, Elizabeth Wong, I always get these names wrong, and a host of other people, Gloria Storer, Dan Cross, I thought he'd be here today, Rick Castro,
Stacey.
Lawrence Fox, and again, we said Stacy Law. So thank you so much. And also, Wanda is in the audience. She gets really shy. I want to thank her for loaning us the first, or one of the copies of a previous book that really gave us a benchmark for being able to do this. Because I want to be able to answer questions rather than give them, I'm now going to turn it over to Kimberly.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Some of our contributors are in the audience and some of the core committee members. The mission of the book, let's dive into what was hoped to be accomplished by producing it, the flavor of migration, the fusion of cuisines, China, Japan, Filipino, Thai, Vietnamese, Laotian, Hmong, Cambodian, Indian, and regions within each of these countries. These dishes take us on a culinary journey. And I'll start now by asking Ted, what inspired ACC to take on this project?
Well, the idea was brought to us by Chef David Suhu with Maryellen in tow, and the two have collaborated on several projects before, but they hit all the right notes with ACC because if there's anything that's really big around here, it is food and it is music, and that goes with bridging the gaps between different generations and cultures. And so when they came to me with the idea, I said, well, this is a no-brainer because I trust that if those two put together a book, it's going to be a good one. And I'm happy to say that even before the book is shipped, we've already sold about 700 pre-orders of the book.
Thank you. I want to do a really quick shout out. They just walked in, Auntie Molly and Liz.
The uninvited guests we just heard about this morning.
Oh, no. You've been invited, but that's okay. They were really instrumental in the early stuff. They did a program on Channel 10 that brought in a lot of contributions. So we want to thank them, even though we mentioned you earlier. Good.
So Ted, again, what's the vision of the book and what did you hope to accomplish?
Well, the vision of the book, first and foremost, is to celebrate our cultures that make up what we call the Pan-Asian community. And ACC has its roots in reaching out to originally the Chinese and Japanese communities, but over the years has really branched out to all of Asia, Southeast Asia, and today it's very diverse. We're not just Asian anymore, we are all cultures, and we're finding that our biggest cooking programs and events tend to be Asian inspired, but also patronized by people from all different ethnicities and backgrounds. And so this book is really a unifier and a community builder for us, and so far it's really delivered on that.
Awesome. Now let's just switch gears a little bit. Maryellen, tell us a little bit about your experiences with Asian cooking.
So I lived in a very multicultural neighborhood. I grew up in the projects at what was then called New Helvetia off of Broadway. Really wonderful mix. You could tell whose house you were in front of by the smells. So if you were in front of the Friedrichs' house, they had all these wonderful smells of saffron and stuff from their cuisine. We lived next door to the G's. The G's owned a wonderful Chinese market at 13th and W. And they were wonderful because they would bring lots of products home that we had never tasted before. We also had Japanese that lived in the community, Filipinos, and in Southside Park, after redevelopment especially, so many of the Asian community that were left out of Southside Sacramento ended up coming. So that was my introduction, but I have to tell you, my favorite thing was going to a restaurant called the Ding Hao. I don't know if anybody remembers it, on Broadway. Alan Chin and Nancy Akiyama, who are sponsors, Alan's father actually owned that. And we used to love to go and be able to get all the traditional things that white people get, I hate to say, right? I mean, you got sweet and sour and egg foo young. But my father used to laugh that the chicken soup that they did, that a chicken just kind of ran over the top of the broth and then did it. And then later, the Hong Kong Cafe. And that's where I actually learned a lot of my cooking. They were very generous and taught me how to make dim sum, which we'll talk about later. But the greatest influence was Gladys and George Okino. They were Japanese. They would have a New Year's Eve party, or New Year's Day party, every other year. And they introduced me to all of the Japanese foods when I was just 10. So I feel like I've been immersed in that. And plus I have 2 Chinese grandkids and 5 half Filipino.
Nice. So how did you ensure the cookbook would stand out in such a saturated and competitive genre? And what is it about this one that makes it so unique? And you can also piggyback on this.
Okay, so one of the things that we talked about early is that it couldn't just be a collection of recipes. And especially for the Asian community, who I kept on hearing over and over, we don't write them down. We don't have them, but everybody had a story. And everybody could sit down with us and tell us kind of what went into the dish. So that's why we decided to really look at not only the foods we shared communally with family and community, but the stories that surrounded it. And I think that that's really unique. Also, most of you have lots of community cookbooks at home. They're usually spiral bound, which this could have been. But they just oftentimes they just list recipes with nothing about the person who actually submitted them. And oftentimes you can't even tell what year. I was glad to see ACC because it actually said 2015 on the title. So many of these cookbooks, you want to get a sense of what is the culture at a particular time. And so I think that it's what are called head notes, the introductions and stories. Juana's especially, Elizabeth did the same thing. The stories that you tell about those recipes are really different. And with Kimberly's help, I'll do a call out to Kimberly, really encouraged us to do chapter sections so that when we move from a type of an item, whether it was going to be vegetables or meat or noodles or dumplings, we explained how those might differ in each of the cultures.
Okay. And assembling the team, I'm going to ask and invite Lana to join in. How did you assemble the team and who are the members?
Pardon?
How did you assemble the team and who are the members?
How did I assemble? I come from a family of 7 girls. And the most amazing thing is in Chinese culture, you never forget the order that you are in. So I was the 5th daughter of 7 girls. So that meant that in the arena of kitchen, I was always the one washing the pots and pans. So when it was time for me to learn how to chop a chicken, I crushed all the bones and immediately was sent out to no longer cook. So I honor my sisters. We all had a time and space in our family in that, so when Yvonne, my older sister, who's gone and rest in peace, and I honor my sister Yvonne, I try to bring in some of her most favorite dumplings because she always cooked for us kids. There were actually 13 children born to my mother and father. There were actually, in addition to the 7 girls, there were these 4 boys. And the 4 boys also played a great role because they were great eaters and they're great providers. My father was a renowned Bartlett pear farmer in the Sacramento Valley. But getting back to how we come in, my littlest sister, we call it number 7 sister, is Debbie. So when it was her turn to cook, she looked up at her older sister, Christine, who is the 2nd older sister. She took over making this wonderful thing called the winter solstice dumpling soup. And that is actually what we call our Chinese Christmas. But in many, many cultures, you celebrate the seasons and the changes. So my little sister, coming from having been the youngest, learned how to do this, and she now makes the winter solstice soup. My sister Christine has also a great history in many, many families with many, many children. She was like mother surrogate, so many, many times she'd be the one to give us the best advice about where to buy the best chicken. That's the rice to use, that's not the rice to use. You know, this is the right sauce. For us, it was always celebrating the arrival, the bringing over of all the traditions and cultures of my mother and father, who immigrated from China in 1920 during the terrible exclusion years, how they settled after being separated for 10 years because of the laws. My mother was an extraordinary cook, a fabulous hostess. She never thought anything of bringing out all her porcelain bowls and having us kids in the kitchen wash all the soup bowls and all the plates, but we had fabulous parties. She was married to a very hardworking farmer. My dad became a very, very legendary farmer in the Sacramento Valley, and the things that he brought to us was to never forget who you are. It's funny, you know, we in Sacramento have dialects. I married a man who was from San Francisco. He was a different dialect. I was raised in a Sayup dialect, which means I was fluent because my mother didn't learn English. So a lot of the culture comes from our wanting to perpetuate and never forget all these traditions and cultures that my mother and father brought to America.
If you could expound on that a little bit more, you submitted recipes from your sisters and your family. What are the foods you grew up with, the ones you ate every day, and the celebratory foods that you share with friends, family, and community for special occasions? And if you could, just, I'm going to extend that a little bit more, describe some of the recipes in the book from your family.
Oh, sure. You know, as is tradition, in the Chinese culture, we go down from sister number 1 to sister number 7. So my oldest sister Yvonne made this wu ti, wu tao go, different dialect, but it's actually a taro that you dice and you put into a little bit of blanc and you steam it, top it with luscious sausage, mushroom, cut into little triangles. My sister used to bring in from out of town because she's the only one who moved out of town. So my sister called Auntie I would bring in platters of this wu ti, and we kids would gobble it up. I really didn't come to cooking until later. I'm the 5th daughter. I'm the one who's not in the kitchen. My second oldest sister, Christine, was actually our family's mother surrogate. In many, many families, children looked to mom, but mom by that time was living on the farm with my dad. So my sister Christine taught us a lot of the things, and hers is called the gailong. And there's a funny story because we speak in certain dialects. So my sister made this gailong, which is a fried dumpling, which is to die for. She made platters of it and it would be gone. But one day we made gailong at the farm, and my third sister's son, Tim, comes running in and says, Popo, I want gailong. And my mom laughed so hard she had tears coming out of her eyes because Timmy asked for gailong, which is chicken coop, which we had on the farm. So forever in our family, when Timmy asked for gailong, he got gailong. So the next sister is Carol. And Carol was a person who learned how to go outside the family. She contributed aloha ribs, pork ribs, which really is a simple thing, but Carol was also at home when mom was on the farm. So she would make up this huge tray of wonderful ribs, and it's just a fabulous recipe. You just put in all the marinade, put it in and bake it. And then that comes to me. I am a very passionate historian and also a caretaker of our culture. So I submitted the very, very treasured gaidiu, which is chicken wine. And in Chinese culture, when you have a baby, it is thought that you have really exhausted and really made your system very, very weak. So I'm sure for generations, I know my mother did it for 13 children, and I did it for my one child. But it is chicken wine with fungus, the fungus, the ginger, chunks of chicken. You make this wonderful broth. So yes, I was in an alcoholic haze for about 30 days, but it is to restore, it is to boost. And we also had the other side, which I didn't put in, which is something called pig's feet. But this gaidu, the rice wine, is now made by us, women who no longer are having children, but we make the gaidu to restore our bodies. Now during the winter, when our hands are cold, when we feel a little kind of not strong, we make that up. Then my sister Joey follows me, and Joey made her favorite, very favorite, it's called salmon noodle salad. It is a fabulous Pan-Asian recipe, and she does it because we have 61 people in my Fong family. That's the immediate. We're talking about 11 children, 17 grandchildren, 17 great-grand, and all the partners and all the friends. So she makes this cold salmon salad, and she's added tons of stuff. And then we get to baby sister Debbie, and Debbie, of course, offered the amazing, my husband called it the doughboy soup. It's little balls, and it's the winter solstice soup. And you make this with turnip, with chicken, with the great lapchang, and she simmers this. It takes a village. So all the older sisters and baby sister Debbie and all the older nieces or anyone who can roll a ball dumpling, we make this huge pot of soup, and literally it is gone. And it's, if we can squirrel away some for another day, it's great. But the one thing we always wanted to do, and I've been blessed also, my mother died when I was 20, I was only 32. And with my mother's passing, I had wonderful, what we call yima, second moms, aunties. So there were all these aunties who said to me, it's nice that you like my wu tea, it's nice that you like my gaidu, but you gotta record it. So part of this book is to record our legacy, our stories, and the whys behind we do what we do. And there's my husband, who is 4th generation Chinese, who's probably as Chinese as my friend Maryellen here, used to kind of look, and he said, you know something? If there weren't a story, you guys would make up a legacy or something about it. But 4th generation from San Francisco is almost like coming from another place. And we used to say, it's a small world, isn't it? But it really isn't. But you cross the cultural and even the dialect bridge by cooking and enjoying each other's culture. And there's layers of culinary history and festivals and joy. So that's what I bring.
Thank you for that. And
Thank you.
So I want to say that the Fong Sisters, the 4 of them, their recipes are in the book. You can look them up. It's everything she talked about. But the Fong Sisters, Carol, Debbie, Lana, and Joey are very active at ACC. Many of our major food events are powered by the Fong Sisters. Together I call them Food Inc. because you really can't escape their food and their presence. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Ted.
And similarly, Ted, or do you have any contributions with regard to your family and how it relates to the cookbook?
I don't personally, but my wife put a recipe in here. And this is a recipe passed down from her mother. Her mother used to cook just by eyeball and feel and touch, and I guess all of her children growing up became the same way. But because there were certain guidelines for the book, my wife had to sit down and kind of experiment with it.
Right.
But at the end of her recipe, she said, put whatever you have in the refrigerator into this in amounts that are appropriate for you. So there's still a lot of subjectiveness that goes into Filipino cooking.
Tell about Mario's background.
My wife, Maryellen, is from the Philippines. She grew up also from a large family of 6 children. I'm from a family of 8 children. And that's what bonded us together in the very beginning, food. We like to travel and eat things that we've never had before. And again, food is one of those things that just brings people together. And we like to try different palates and cuisines, everything from Turkey to Mexican to Costa Rican to you name it. There's nothing that we won't touch.
And if I can add something, I didn't realize that I had a connection to Ted, but his mother, Ruby Fong, used to set up these wonderful cross-cultural events with other cities, including Jinan. And when I went to China the first and second time, she arranged me to get private cooking classes in people's homes. So I thought that was wonderful, so thank you. Yeah, that was one of the discoveries.
She just brought that to my attention a few months ago. My mom has passed away in 2017, but she had led tours to China for about 20 years for the U.S.-China Friendship Association. And again, a lot of that was based on arts and culture and food exchange. Back then, especially Chinese diplomacy in the 80s was all based on these sort of people-to-people things that all cultures are interested in, and food was a big part of that.
Good.
A little bit back to the book. Maryellen, how did you recruit contributors?
That was like herding cats, or worse. I had 23 cats. They were more manageable at times. So as most of you know, we had flyers out. We were in the newsletter. Wonderfully, we got a lot of contributors when Elizabeth and Auntie Molly went on to Channel 10, but it was still a real struggle until I did something that I'm kind of proud of. Diana Liu, who sadly contributed quite a few of the recipes for our book, but passed away about 5 weeks ago. When I told her I was having trouble, she said, "You're sending out the letter with your name. What if you sent out the same letter with my name on it to all of our friends?" And so she gave me a list of people that she knew from the ACC. Call out to the Renaissance Society. The Renaissance Society was wonderful. A lot of our members, including ACC members, Virginia Uchida, also got contributors. But as soon as I put Diana's name on it, suddenly we got a flood of recipes back. And that was true of using everyone else's name. We thought we were going to have 100 recipes. We thought it was going to be a smaller book. We had well over 200 recipes, I think, by the time that we were done. And we couldn't accept all of them because we did get a lot of cream of chicken soup and mushroom soup. I do want to do a call out to Marianne G., who is a wonderful pastry chef. Her husband was, I think, the CFO here for almost 30 years. And so she was a little disappointed because she submitted a lot of her recipes for pastries, and we really wanted to have it be a Pan-Asian cookbook and to stay as pure as we could. So we couldn't accept absolutely everything. I thank the contributors especially. So we couldn't have done this without having well over, I think, 100 contributors by the time we're done.
And the process, how long was the entire process from initial concept to having a published copy?
You want to answer that one, Ted?
Our first meeting was probably last September. And
it's almost a
again,
year.
David called me up and said, "I got this idea for a cookbook, and Maryellen and I are going to be at your office in 2 days." So I sat down with them, but it was a no-brainer from the start. And we had gone around to see what kind of cookbook it would be, could be, should be. So there were some iterations. We pivoted a few times. But when we looked at really the people who were submitting recipes and the most interest, it was pretty clear that Pan-Asian, quote unquote, was the way to go. And so we promoted this in many of our issues of ACC News and our blog. And we had people talk to the media like Liz and Molly. So the word got out. And there are a lot of people in this book that I don't recognize, but they recognize ACC and they follow us. And we really appreciate that attention that the community has given this project.
Right. And I might mention, he might not recognize the name, but a lot of them are people that do sign up for classes. They take a lot of the ACC wellness classes, the lifelong learning programs as well. Mahjong, I think we even have we have at least one poker person here today. So they all have a real affiliation to ACC, even if they might not be as visible. The one thing I will say is getting the recipes, which I thought was difficult, wasn't nearly as difficult as the editing phase. And what I should have realized from the beginning when we planned this, because we thought we'd get the cookbook out earlier than what we did, was how much time it takes to actually edit and design a book. And when it gets to that thing, you have to start going with a little bit more of a core committee, because otherwise it's designing by committee. That process, I think, took us a lot longer than we expected, but it resulted in a much, much better book.
You want to say something about Vanessa?
Oh, God, I can't say enough about Vanessa Wong Perez. She is the designer, and I hope that everyone here gets a copy of the book. She designed both the cover, obviously, and made some design decisions for the inside of the book. It's absolutely brilliant. I first met her in 2012, I think. I had worked with one of our other editors, Lawrence Fox, and Rivka Sass at the Sacramento Public Library to write a fund for being able to have regular people do self-published books. And we needed to have a first book that we could show people what the book was going to be. Vanessa was recommended. I used to do a lot of promotions with the West Coast publishers of cookbooks, and they recommended her from Random House. And she ended up volunteering. Basically, she got a small honorarium to do a book called An Omnibus. And the omnibus had one of every kind of story that you might have in a book. And it was brilliantly designed. She went on to do a lot of the books for the I Street Press. She has worked with Random House and almost every major publisher. And I didn't realize that, and tons of books with me, I didn't realize that during COVID she had to kind of regroup herself, and so she went in a slightly different direction and has worked tirelessly, hours and hours on this book. So I really want to praise her and do something special, because it would not have looked anywhere near as professional. And the one thing I will say is all we sent out to some people was just the cover and a few interior pages. And we have had major bookstores in San Francisco, museums in LA, the Sacramento History Museum, California Museum, and local bookstores just off of the design say we'll sell them. So that's due to Vanessa.
So maybe Sean can bring up the slide as to where you can find the cookbook page and how to order it. There we go. That's Michelle showing the book. So we do have a cookbook page, accsv.org/cookbook, and that has ordering information. Plus, we're going to put other content up there. Maybe you can explain that, Maryellen.
Okay, good. So what we thought we would do is, you would think I would be a completist. You would think that I would say, after a year of this, I'm going to just go move on to new things. But to me, for this book to be complete is to encourage people like you in the audience and other people that really benefit from ACC to continue to submit stories and recipes. So, and also a lot we have a lot of videos that we thought we couldn't show how to do some things that we could actually post. So when you go to the page, you'll be able to see how-to videos, guides to more resources. You'll be able to submit additional recipes if you'd like. And then we thought we'd put some of that into a newsletter, even Substack. So this continues. I will say that David Suhu would like to do a second version. We'd like to take a rest before that's done. That is a little bit truer to what some of the essentials of cooking are. This is very much a community cookbook. And we said all the different countries. It reflects the actual recipes that people either cook for a celebration or for every day. And there were some that would have been nice to have had in the book that were not. So we'll be able to include those as well. I'll do a call out specifically. Shankari Arko, who submitted some Indian recipes. Lisa Lynn was another one. Elizabeth has quite a few. Lana has videos. Some of those how-to videos are going to be crucial to understanding how to cook these.
Okay, so just really quickly, barring any challenges that were encountered during the assembly, the writing or editing, and as well as the publishing process, what advice would you have for others who want to start or create a community cookbook?
Do it. So, and we have a book called How to Whip Up a Cookbook that you can use. I think that it is crucial for communities to come together to preserve the legacy of that community through recipes and stories. The Sacramento Public Library, there's a Friends group out of Colonial Heights. I'm going to give a call out to them because a lot of their recipes from the Hmong people ended up coming to us that are looking at it. So it's hard. There are cookbook places out there that you could use for spiral. You don't have to go quite as in depth, I guess, as we did, but I think it's really important. But more importantly, for you to preserve your own family recipes. And I will use Lana's family especially. I mean, talk about could do their own family cookbook. I think that it is so crucial to be able to pass those on. And it doesn't, again, don't need a professional designer. You could do this on Word. You can do spiral bound. You can print them, but I think it's going to be important.
So given the diversity in the book, this is a question that I have. And were any of the recipes tested before being included in the book, or it was just on the basis that this is what our family ate, or this is what we grew up eating, or this is what we enjoyed when we dined out, that type of thing in the submission of the recipes? What would you say to someone who gets the book, you know, to try them all? I know having edited it, I've already flagged several pages. Probably half the book I will be in the kitchen trying a lot of these recipes. So,
well, the ideal thing, which is the chicken wine pot that's served to new moms, the gaidu pot is also served at the baby's coming out party. So in old Chinese history and culture, celebration of a new birth didn't happen until the baby was a month. So we call it the monto, mongut, full month coming out. So trying out the recipe is a good thing because with my mom gone, but I had a fabulous auntie at Chenggu, which literally says senior auntie. She took me under her wing, and so every time, pen and paper, I'm a pen and paper girl. So every time we got together to make these big pots, and you got to translate the amount of black fungus, ginger, broth, wood ears. But anyway, I had a very, very good friend who had a baby party coming up, and his name was Calvin Jung. So Calvin had 5 babies to celebrate, some twins and 3 littles from another girl from Carolyn and Janelle. So he had a gigantic baby party. So testing it, we took 2 huge pots and we took notes again and again. So when you look at gaidu for a party, this is for a gigantic baby party, 200 people.
wow.
So we serve up, so he would serve up at a restaurant, you know, the usual chow mein, egg foo young, sweet and sour, and then everyone would be running over to the table where they had the gaidu. So everyone got a little bowl of this and just sup it up. But you had to test, retest, double check the amount of wine or not wine. And those kinds of things happen when you have celebratory times. But I make soup every week, so I also submitted this thing called a watercress soup. Watercress is extremely, extremely restorative. Many studies in the Great Britain find that watercress is so healthy for you. But I make that soup at least once every couple of weeks and get batches of watercress and rinse it all out. But you want to slow simmer, put the carrots in, put either if you're into turkey necks or you're into pork bones to give the aroma. But also making the soup means that you jar up a little one because you don't have a lot of this watercress soup, and you share it with your family, your friends, this auntie who's not well. But you test it every time you make that soup in my family.
Can I add something to that too? One of the things that a lot of people that submitted recipes to us did it in person and would describe how they cooked it. And then I literally had measuring spoons and cups and say, do you think it's this much or that much? So when you go to cook from this book, and I always tell people, Don't be a slave to the recipes themselves. It's the smell. Does it taste right to you? Do you think it needs more salt? Could it use a little bit more oyster sauce? And also, everybody's palate is really different. So you do have to, if you want to call it test it, make things more than once to be able to do it. And if you look at a recipe and you don't have all of the ingredients, and I brought a whole lot of ingredients today because this is about 1/10 of what I always have in my pantry because I never know when I'm going to want something, right? Gochujang. If you want to add a little bit, you try it with a teaspoon one time. If that's not enough, add. So don't be a slave to these, although the first time you should try to do it as the person intended because that's the taste that they're trying to deliver, and then experiment with it.
And with that, sourcing either the ingredients or because a lot of American markets, I know a lot of people shop at Safeway or they shop at other stores, but there are specialty markets for these types of.
Right.
So perfect, yeah. Ranch 99, one of my favorites. And then even substituting ingredients, but more particularly the equipment. Some things call specifically for
other equipment.
Exactly.
I would like to throw that out. Is there a mechanism for using a mic to the audience? Those of you in the audience, Lana, where is it that you are getting your ingredients? I'm going to do a call out to this one place, and that is I don't buy fish unless it comes from Sunfish, which is on Broadway, because when he was in the old location, the family was in the old location, that's where I would end up buying it, because you know that he's getting the absolutely best quality that you can. A lot of ingredients, I shop at, is it the International, Kate, right. Because you can get everything, it's out in Rancho Cordova. But where is it that you're buying the ingredients for yours, if anybody wants to comment? Elizabeth. I was going to just ask Elizabeth outright because I knew that she would.
Okay, so the question was, where do we buy our ingredients? Okay?
Right.
Well, we go to the places that aren't even on the Chinese map.
Ooh.
Last week we went to this place, we don't know what the name is, but it's right there on Freeport. It's not Ho Chi Minh, it's across the street. But the two guys were eating pumpkin seeds. And I asked, would you like to help us sell the cookbook? And they just kept chewing on their pumpkin seeds. So I said, well, who's the boss? And one guy wrote his name, the other guy wrote his name. Now, this is the place between Far East and Blue Moon. And so there are a lot of, I find that Freeport has at least 6 places that sell, or around that area, that sell roast duck alone, which is what our video was about for ACC. But back to this, who's the boss? And they scribbled their names in Chinese. I couldn't read it. I'm 4th generation San Franciscan, like you said. Auntie Molly, she's raised in Sacramento, but her Chinese school is kind of limited, right? So here we were bumbling. Now, I have a joke at the end, but so finally I bring the card and show it to Ted Fong. And between the two of us, we could figure out the word for boss, Lo Ban. Yeah, so he says in Mandarin, I say in Cantonese. But the thing is, when we were leaving, I was with Nellie, Auntie Molly. Auntie Nellie's only 96 and Auntie Molly's 95. The 2 shopkeepers said to me, thanks for bringing your Westerner friends. They couldn't even tell they were Chinese. Because I was speaking Chinese, broken Chinese to the shopkeepers and speaking to English and translating for the 2 aunties. So to make a long story short is, those are the places you want to shop at. Okay, they had real water chestnuts. What did you think?
Yes, it looks real good too.
And Auntie Molly just this year learned that nothing but fresh
water chestnuts.
Okay, enough.
Enough, she said. So I just want to say other places would be these hole-in-the-wall places. There's quite a few along Freeport. I think U Street, 15th Street area used to have a couple. I just don't believe in the big stores.
Right.
Okay? So
Yeah, and if I can put also the Asian market, we call, Elaine Korn did a wonderful series, and she was involved in the book as well as David, and really helped shape the early stages for how we did this. She did a series called Around the World in 30 Blocks, literally about the places. But the Renegade Market is an Asian market with almost all Southeast Asian vendors. They are not organic. Some of them grow in community plots. Some buy from some of the local places. But if you go there on a Sunday instead of the market that's at 6th, you will see almost every chef in town from all of the Asian markets buying their produce fresh there. And a lot of them now are starting to buy directly from some of the farmers. They're asking them for special blends or special kinds of basils, Thai basils, so that they can improve their cooking. So another great place to shop.
Okay. And you mentioned fresh versus canned or bottled, right?
Yeah, Elizabeth, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. So my whole life, and David's not here, but I'm going to quote him. David was the first, his father opened up the Teacup, which was also one of the first restaurants that I ever went to, 1960 on 21st Street. I remember going to the Teacup. And what they introduced that nobody else had before was fresh bean sprouts, fresh water chestnuts, and all fresh vegetables. And they would make a lot of the sauces that we get in jars fresh as well. And he always told a story that you could tell how well another restaurant was doing by how many bean sprouts they ordered in a particular week. But I asked him that question and I didn't get an answer. In, for us, it's kind of like if I don't like to use canned things, but it's almost impossible. I mean, you don't make your own oyster sauce, am I right? And others. So do you want to answer a little bit? And one of the things that I loved is you displayed once all the wonderful packages that you kept for your juke that you have on hand all the time.
Okay.
Why those are so important in cooking to have the traditional things that are coming from that home country.
Well, so the question again, please?
Bottled versus fresh.
Okay.
Bottled or canned or packaged from?
Actually, I use both.
Okay.
Because my secret ingredient is over 50 years old.
Ooh.
Okay, people are saying, oh, it's dried seaweed, okay?
Right.
Actually, it's dried fungus. It's called the hair fungus that you use for Chinese New Year called Kaffeeklatsch. I have one that's over 50 years and the other one is maybe 40 years. And Auntie Molly has some that's even older. But when we got together, we would pre-soak those. So some of those ingredients, who knows if they're toxic or not. We're still bouncing around here. Yeah. But the thing is, every time I mention that, they always are surprised. But fresh is best if you can get it. Otherwise, you don't have that variety. The flavor, and it brings it out when you chop and slice, and how you chop and slice, and how big the pieces are. So that's why I would say I don't have any particular favorites, but I have both. And I leave mine out for years. Okay?
Good.
They don't spoil.
I'm going to give another hint for the different tastes because every culture is different. Chinese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Laotian have their own brands. So if you want to change up a dish, and I'm going to use oyster sauce as an example. Soy sauces, I mean, you can spend hundreds of dollars now for soy sauces. Experiment with the different jars to see which one might create a different kind of taste for you when you do your dish. Did you have any that you wanted to add, Lana?
The most interesting thing, I'm glad that I passed to my son who's a foodie, but the one thing that's really quite fabulous right now is fish sauce.
Yes.
And most people think, fish. And my husband is one of the ones who won't come into a room when there's a certain hamha shrimp sauce, and he'll be in the other side of the house. But the fish sauce adds umami, wonderful, wonderful flavor. And then you just use a teeny, teeny bit of it. One of my good friends is my Fawn, who owns Lemongrass, and she has taught me how to be careful using fish sauce. You're going to add it towards the end. It's not fishy smelling. It adds such depth of flavor that you can't get. And it adds depth of flavor, I think I can say, without it being too salty.
Right.
We all are looking at eating more healthy and things like that. My history with David goes back many years because I took a cooking class from David and Elaine. And you know, in Sacramento, history goes deep and wide. And David and Elaine are wonderful, wonderful proprietors, have had a wonderful legacy and history in Sacramento as well. But you know, if you're in it for the food, you're going to know who are the best restaurants. My mother always knew who the best restaurants were, the place to have the biggest parties. What Maryellen said about the Renegade Market, I totally love that. It's an experience everyone should have.
When you recommend the Renegade Market, is that the one on Sunday morning that's a couple of blocks from the under the freeway?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at 5th and Broadway.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
The police have been nice enough to close off the street.
Right.
But the interesting is to go early, and the thing is to take a look at some of the more obscure or interesting things. And Maryellen said, try and bring it into your cuisine.
Right.
A lot of wonderful items there, and they're all the proprietors are so glad to have other people come into their market, and they're happy to share that. But my son is a wonderful cook, but he's also very fussy and can be fussy about which spices he uses. But the fish sauce is fantastic. I think the other thing that we look for is, you know, just a variety of palate. I tend to want to go to the same restaurant and order the same things, and he's not like that at all. He opens the world up to us, and you know, we're a better family and culinary tryout people for that. And it's your community. It's your friends. So instead of going to the same place for the dim sum, go over to Stockton Boulevard, go out to Elk Grove. There are a lot of fabulous new restaurants, and you know, support local.
Yeah, and I want to give a talk about poultry for just a second. When I was a kid growing up, we were across from the poultry market that was again at 5th and Broadway, and I used to love going over because you could pick out your own chicken. Literally, and I remember going and watching the women pick, and they would say, do you want us to kill it or do you want to kill it? And how many of the women would just say, I'll do it, would just do a twirl of the neck and then walk home, literally plucking the, you know, the feathers out. And my mom would take those chickens and continue to boil them to get all of the pin feathers out when I was a kid. My daughter-in-law used to own a restaurant. She's in the book too, Sally Fang. Her family had a restaurant in San Francisco. And the one thing I asked before I did this, I said, do you have any advice I should give to people? And she said, yes, never buy a chicken that doesn't have the feet or the head on it. Mm-hmm. And cook with that, because if you really want the flavor of the broth or you want it to be authentic, it's going to include that.
So I have just 2 more quick questions before we wrap up, and you can find out where to get copies of the book. One is the sidekick and the staple to all Asian cuisine, rice. Why the difference between a regular steamed white rice or a sticky rice?
Sticky rice is short grain rice, and you use the sticky short grain rice to make our famous jong and to make the dim sum lo mai gai, and it has capacity to hold. So when you want to fold the bamboo leaves, which we teach, and you fold the bamboo, when you unfold it after it's cooked, you want the rice to be there intact, yes? The other rice is jasmine, which I prefer, but short grain rice, and you want the jasmine for the aromatics. So I have 5 rice bins in my extra room, and you get a dole of this and dole of that. But the long grain allows itself to cook more discreetly, separately. So when you want to make a good fried rice, go for a long grain rice or a jasmine rice. The Calrose, which is the short little guy, which is, you know, preferred by many of the sushi makers. Nishiki Koda is wonderful. I'm a very good friend of the Oto people, and I've always kind of learned my rice history. And you learn what kind of rice is the best for your palate. So we're now cutting back on rice, so I've been cooking a lot of brown rice.
Ah, interesting.
And brown rice comes short and long grain.
Okay.
But in terms of sticky rice, long grain rice, jasmine rice, the world is out there for you. And again, like Maryellen says, go out and try the different rices for your palate. There are certain things that go well with the different kinds of foods and soups.
Awesome.
And I just wanted to show a little show and tell. We do have the sticky rice with banana leaf in the back to try. But it's important to me, I think presentation is just as important as anything else. I didn't bring it today, but I do have coral reef lamps. Remember the old, anybody went, coral reef is featured in the book. I was going to, when we do the donor event, donate one, see if we could auction it off for a lot of money. But I like serving things in traditional dishes. In the back also, I brought, I have a lot of the bowls and stuff from the coral reef. But these are obviously from India. So if I'm doing a dish, Shankari Arko did 2 wonderful recipes. She's going to do a demonstration for us probably sometime in November or December. There's something about putting it in a regular bowl and the other in a bowl from the culture that it comes that I think is really important. And this one is going to go to either bingo or poker. I haven't decided which. There is a recipe for oyokadan, which is, I learned how to make by watching Midnight Diner, which is a wonderful, if you haven't seen it, Japanese series. But it's a way of just making a simple rice and egg dish. And there's something about putting it in here that makes it feel better. And then I threw my own sushi. I've got some others. For just serving wasabi and other stuff. I just threw my own. And drinking sake, these are, you guys can't see them, these are my father's, so they're, what's inside, it's a sake cup, but when you pour it, there is a lady inside, and you see the Japanese woman inside. And so there's something ceremonial whenever I have sake. When the old Fuji restaurant was open, we used to take our own sake cups so that we could honor my father while we were drinking sake. So that's one.
Dim sum today.
We have dim sum for everyone who is here. I thought Joy G was going to be here. There's a lot of dim sum recipes. Joy and I used to teach programs on how to, she was also a wonderful origami artist. So we would do kids, teens, and families and create origami, and we would do dim sum. So our recipes are in the book. We picked ours up today from the dim sum house. So we have a little bit, and every one of them, except for one, is actually in the cookbook.
Well, we're getting to the end, and I'm going to have Ted wrap it up with where you can acquire copies of the cookbook, as well as some other interesting information.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here, those who are here today and also online, and for Maryellen, Kimberly, and Lana for being our panelists, and to everyone who put their life and passion into this cookbook. It's really nice to see it all come together. I do want to say a few things about the upcoming Ohana Walk that you might have heard about. It is on September 16th. This is our second annual, and this is another community builder, if you will. It also raises funds, but really the emphasis is on bringing people from different parts of the community together. We have 43 walking teams involved, and we're close to 800 people sign up for it. We want to get to another 100 people, hit 900 by the time of the walk. So if you have not registered, please do so. We'll show you how to do so on the slide on the screen. But the Renaissance has a team, or they're called the Renaissance Walkers. So if you want to join that, that'd be lovely. You can join Deborah Seiler and others on that walking team. And it's just for fun. The walk starts at 8:30 here at ACC. You can walk any distance up to 3 miles, come back. At 10:30, we have live music, food. 11:30 is our picnic lunch, which is included in the registration along with your Ohana Walk t-shirt. And as part of that lunch, we're going to have a special VIP section for our centenarians. We've rounded up more than 20 centenarians in our community, and we have a team of writers who are going to write their mini bios. We're going to publish them in ACC News that comes out in October, and we're going to present some awards and recognitions to them on the 16th. So that itself is worth the price of admission. So I'll let Maryellen have the last word,
Good.
and we'll call it a day.
So I just want to thank Auntie Molly. You have to stick in there another 4 years or 5 years to get into that centenarian list, Auntie Molly. Again, thank you all those of you at home and that are here for contributing to the cookbook. We really encourage you to purchase it. Makes wonderful presents for any of the holidays, birthdays, you name it. And the recipes and the stories, I think, are so crucial to kind of understanding. And I think that's it. Oh, Karen's got her hand up. But I want to especially thank Ted, which I haven't done. If it hadn't, thank you. Ted had the vision to say yes, the fortitude to stick it through when things got sticky. And always is just so upbeat, and it's what can we do to facilitate your success. And he has been a joy, and ACC has been such a joy to work with. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Ted. And Karen had a question.
Ted, could you repeat the website for ordering the book?
Okay, and we do have a slide, but if you can't find it, here we go. That's the cookbook, yes. And you can pre-order that online. It's $25. And then we are going to deliver the first shipment at the Ohana Walk. So you can pick it up there. If you can't make the walk, then we're going to have it available at our office during business hours.
So you're saying that they have to come here to get it?
Yes, but there's also a shipping option. So if you pay extra for shipping, we'll ship it to you.
Although, for those of you, because we do have a large group from Renaissance, I will ask Ted if I can pick up some copies so that since I'm on campus on Fridays, that people can purchase them from me. The money on all the proceeds go directly to ACC Senior Services.
This Friday?
We won't have them back till
next Tuesday. Yeah.
Next Tuesday, yeah. So, and I don't know that we'll have it for the next Friday, but I will be at Renaissance, usually in Ingrained. You can always find me at Ingrained at noon on campus to pick them up there. And then we are encouraging local bookstores to carry it as well. And we do know that there are a couple of museums, time-tested books. Beer's books have all expressed interest, avid reader. And also there is a wonderful Asian-owned bookstore in McKinley Park, and we're hoping to have a little launch there as well. So for those of you in the viewing audience that can't get here, we will have mechanisms for you to be able to purchase it. And I don't want you to buy it from there, but it is available on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble. And we are hoping that CVS and the hardware stores that are all carrying local books are going to carry it too. So we're hoping to have this book all over the city so that we can sell tens of thousands of copies, right?
Thank you, Maryellen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Sean and the crew.